Hey folks, Rob here with another episode of Unboxed, the YouTube series where I, Rob, open and unbox albums on vinyl with my machete. In this episode, we're going on an adventure to Alaska by way of Portugal. The band. That's the name of the band, Portugal the Man, by way of Portland? Yeah, we'll get into it. The name of the album is SHISH. It's their 10th studio album. We're gonna get into it. Come on. Welcome to Unboxed. Listen, if you like music-related content, diving a little deeper into albums, talking about various music-related content, then you're gonna wanna subscribe. Hit the little bell for notifications, give it a thumbs up if you're liking it, maybe even leave a comment. Let's get some dialogue going, huh? Look, I do this just for the shits and gigs of it all, but I do appreciate any feedback. And in the end, I hope you take something away from my content. So I came to discover Portugal the Man back in 2017 with their big hit, Feel It Still, from their album Woodstock. Now the song Feel It Still was a big, popular smash hit. It was everywhere. Movie trailers, NFL football games, and commercials. You know, you couldn't ignore it. The single itself went 7 times platinum, netted them a Billboard Music Award, and among many other awards. Now, just to be clear, I feel a bit ashamed by discovering a band via their most popular hit pop song. And I don't know why, really. I guess I just like to discover a band a little more organically, maybe via a friend's recommendation or discovering it on my own. Look, I don't make up these rules. Or actually, I suppose I really do in my brain. Regardless, this is how it played out for my relationship with Portugal the Man. And I can't be mad at it, because honestly, what a gift to the world Portugal the Man is. And just in time for the holidays. At least at this point of recording this video. And I preach this a lot. You can discover a band well after they've come and gone, or even before they hit it big, or even mid-stride. But the beauty of it is you can always go back and discover their music, and it's new to you, although it might not be new music, which was the case for PTM for me. Also, the band is one of the few that has really survived the stigma of having the big hit song and still stay artistically adventurous. You know, and still be them. And if you listen to Portugal the Man's music post Feel It Still and even pre Feel It Still, you would know that they really didn't change to make a song like that, in my opinion, because it seems to me that they're always being creative and adventurous in their music. But I do love that about the band. They're always changing, always something different. Again, SHISH being their 10th studio album, meaning they have a lot of music to dig into. My personal favorite being Evil Friends. But regardless, having all that music, in my opinion, and I know it's opinionated to say this, but they have more gems than not. So, the band themselves, we need to talk about the band. The heart of the band is John Ghourley. He's the lead singer, songwriter, and guitarist. John grew up in rural Alaska, roughly around Willow. Now, at the time when John was born, the population of Willow was in the hundreds, very off the grid, and often had to travel via dog sled. As a matter of fact, John's parents raced in the Iditarod and raised sled dogs. Not that they didn't have a vehicle, but let's be honest, if you had to use a dog sled for transportation when you were a kid, you mentioned that shit. Now, before they were Portugal the Man, they were a punk band called Anatomy of a Ghost. They only lasted a couple years. They did put out an album, but it was the start that morphed into what we know as Portugal the Man. It was basically John and his old high school friend, Zach Carruthers, on bass. So in 2004, they stopped, dropped, and officially set up shop as Portugal the Man in Portland, Oregon, which is often considered their home base, where Portlanders, Portlandians, and Portlandalos alike often cite the band as adopted royalty. Rightfully so. And so much so that the Portland fans have dubbed the band the Lords of Portland. Now, I'm not sure if the viewers out there experience this too, but as a music lover of bands that I really like, when you hear who their inspirations were, you start to realize why you like their music, whether it's subconscious or literal. I feel like it's in the DNA of the music. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. But recently, John Ghourley was on an episode of the Purple, Yellow, Red, and Blue podcast, and he was saying that he grew up listening to bands like Pantera and Sepultura, which are two bands that I grew up listening to. And I just found that odd that he listed those two bands specifically, but also John listens to a lot of rap. I'm a hip hop head, and specifically he likes Wu-Tang a lot. I'm a woo head. I don't know if that's a real term, but I just said it. In that same interview, John also made the point that, in a way, Portugal the Man is similar to Wu-Tang in that with Wu-Tang you have 9 members. RZA is really the head of Wu-Tang Clan, if you're unfamiliar. He's the producer, the orchestrator of Wu-Tang. In the Portugal the Man world, you got John, who's the orchestrator, the head of Portugal the Man. John is the RZA of the band. You know, the members of the band can change. It's an evolving thing. And I thought that was an interesting analogy, because as of currently, John is the only original member of the band. And another interesting aspect that I found about Portugal the Man is John says he's a shy person, and which is interesting for a lead singer of a band, right? But if you've seen them live, you would understand they really take the focus off of any lead singers or any one member of the band. There's visuals going on in the background. It's really all about the music. The lights are dimmed. There's no spotlight on John. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool. You know, they'll have their solo moments, of course, like any band does. It's not a typical rock band performance. And I again, another thing I really appreciate and love about the band. So, given all that, the other consistent member of the band is Zoe Manville, who's been a pretty integral part of the band, singing background vocals in the studio and on the road. So Zoe and John are actually a couple, and they have a daughter named Frances. Now, they've been very public. She has some medical issues. She has a very rare neurodegenerative disease, which has only been diagnosed in 6 people in the whole world, which is pretty crazy. So you can imagine how this has really impacted the band and their outlook on life. But beyond the music, Portugal the Man is very much an activist band, extremely supportive of indigenous rights, conservation, civil rights, and a slew of other things that we as humans should ultimately really care about. It really shines through in their live performances, which if you've ever seen them in concert, you know that. And in their videos, and on their website, and in their merch. I mean, they wear it on their sleeve. And I think that ultimately comes from being from Alaska and growing up really being in touch with nature like that. Now, as far as the music goes though, the band has worked with many great producers over the years to help shape and craft the sound for each album, but I just want to highlight a couple of producers that they've worked with. One, of course, is Danger Mouse, and the legendary Beastie Boy, Mike D. And if you don't already know, the Mike stands for money and the D is for diamonds. But they worked with a completely different producer on this new album, SHISH, which we will get into. So, given all that, what do you say we get out the machete and we cut this pig open? I summon the spirit
of the legendary singer Prince to deliver me my machete. Yes.
Comes in a nice Mylar sleeve with the sticker on there. I don't have to cut it open. This is the band's 10th studio album, as I said. Released on November 7th, 2025. This particular copy I ordered from Portugal the Man's official website. It's the Blood on Snow vinyl variant, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. But first, let's talk about the album artwork. Now, John Ghourley, not only is he the lead singer, guitarist of the band, songwriter, he's the visual architect behind much of the band's artwork. His style usually mixes like hand-drawn illustration, psychedelic collage, kind of a scrapbook surrealism, right? That mirrors the band's sound. So this is a bold album cover. It makes a statement, right? It's a vintage style Arctic hunting scene with jagged, the blood red lettering that cuts across the quiet landscape like a graphic punch to the mouth. It's raw, it's cultural, it's confrontational, all at the same time. Very much aligned with Portugal the Man's Alaskan-rooted visual identity, which is really the backbone for this project, which is evident with the cover and the track listing. Let's flip it over here and take a look at the back here. But yeah, the track listing, every song name is something to do with Alaska in some way. And something to note about Portugal the Man too is that their sound is never really stuck in one genre. They do dip their toes into pop and psychedelic rock and even punk and metal at some points. But just to keep it simple for us common folk, we just call it alt rock, which I guess in some sense is just dumbing it down. Call me a dummy. But not that we even have to put a label on it, to be honest with you. So this album is their first album since satisfying their contract with Atlantic Records. So now they're fully independent. They've got their own Knick Records, and it looks like it's distributed by 30 Tigers, which is kind of under the umbrella of The Orchard, which is actually distributed by Sony Music. But what that really means is, for the most part, Knick Records is just using the distribution of 30 Tigers and possibly like their management for booking shows, merchandise deals, and what have you. But I don't know the full details on it. That's just traditionally how something like that goes. But in the end, now Portugal the Man has complete, full artistic control of their music. Nobody can tell them what to and not to make or record or say on album. But as for having to report or go directly through a record label, they don't have to do that anymore. I don't know the specifics of everything. I don't have the contracts in front of me here. I must have misplaced them. But as I said, you know, their artwork on their albums is always very detailed, very quality, regardless of with a label or without. They always have a gatefold, which it looks like this one is. Again, more of that collage / scrapbook type look. You've got snowmobiles. You know, this is Alaska themed for sure. But I love the contrast here. The very bright and colorful to the darker black and white, or it's not quite black and white, but it's just a darker image. And that's kind of, I guess, Portugal the Man in a nutshell anyways. Their music, as I said, it just crosses genres. It can reflect the good, the darkness, and also a lot left to be interpreted. Let's see what we got inside here. Okay, you've got lyrics. Okay, it looks like, yeah, illustration, John Ghourleys is on there. Album design, art direction, John Ghourleys is on there, of course. Produced by Mush, and that's maybe the production duo of Kane Ricciardi, I believe is how you say his last name. Forgive me if I say that wrong. Kane Ricciardi and John Ghourley. Recorded at Knick Studio in Portland, Oregon. Always interesting artwork. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty cool. Here, I'll do that right here. It's kind of a washed, a muted like white with the red in there. That legitimately looks like blood on snow. And that picture might be Francis with some googly eyes. I do not know. That's a quality album too, feeling. I'm gonna say 140 gram vinyl. And there's kind of some raised print on top of here. Bart Simpson with a skateboard. There's like kind of a duck. I don't know who he is, but either way, always interesting album artwork. So I've had about a month to digest this album now, since it came out digitally, and I've been just patiently waiting for the vinyl to arrive so I can slap it on the turntable and give it a spin. But as it currently stands, of the 10 tracks, here are some of my standouts. So number one, the opening track, Denali. They released this song before the album came out, so a lot more time to digest this song versus the rest of the album. But lots of influence in this song. You get some horns, some heavy guitar work in there. It's a great introduction to the album. Next up, I would go with Knick. I love this one. A great melding of genres. I hear rock, maybe some new wave synth in there. It starts off with like a mellow and hypnotic kind of vibe to it, but then takes a real twist midway through into a crunchy, guitar-laden masterpiece. Third track that I would highly recommend, and I'm gonna botch this, but I'm gonna go for it. Coca Knockers. That's fun to say, if it's right. This is the Portugal the Man sound that I love. There's this crunchy guitar, but with some horns, and it just kind of mellows out at the end, you know? It's really Portugal the Man to a T, where it's like, you can't really define them as one genre, even though I said it earlier, dumbing it down as alt-rock. Next up, track 9, Tanana. Now this is the lead single that's really getting a lot of radio play, at least at our indie radio station here in Minneapolis. Solid mix of like some lo-fi and hi-fi type music with some great energy. Solid Portugal the Man track. And then finally, Father Gun. The finale to the album opens with some hi-fi synths, kind of a vague topic within the lyrics that I think is really supposed to be left to the listener to interpret for themselves. And I guess listen to the lyrics yourself, you know, draw your own conclusion. But leaving it so open-ended like that, I think a great way to wrap up the album. Now, despite my feelings on some of the tracks on this album, there's some kind of weird experimental type songs that I think maybe are throwbacks to their punk rock days. And honestly, they're just not for me, but they're not bad. I'm an album listener, so I listen to albums front to back. I feel like that's the way that the artist made this and sequenced this album. So that's how I try to listen to albums, to see what kind of journey they take you through, right? And not all the time, of course. Sometimes there's a time and a place to go right to Feel It Still or Knick. But as a whole, I rarely skip a song. In this album, I don't skip any. Usually a song has to be pretty bad for me to skip. So that's not an issue here on SHISH. The album just takes all sorts of twists and turns, and ultimately, I love that. Now, as a whole, music publications online seem to be giving this mostly favorable reviews, which I agree with. But who am I really? I'm just Rob. Although this is not my favorite Portugal the Man project, I'm not quite sure where to place it yet in their discography. But for what it's worth, I would give this one a solid 3.5 machete rating. I could go without the punk songs, but I feel like a band that's so diverse like Portugal the Man, that this album has at least one song that should appeal to any longtime fan. And I do want to take a moment to give a special thanks to the folks over at the Portugal the Man subreddit. I went on there to kind of try to get some resources to dig into the band. I mean, anyone can go to ChatGPT and Wikipedia to get info on a band or search the internet, but I wanted to hear it from my peers, the fans, and the longtime fans too. And I got some great resources. So I want to give a big shout out to Mark, who's the host of the Purple, Yellow, Red, and Blue podcast, where he recently interviewed John Ghourley and gave me a lot of insight to use for this episode. Ironically, Purple, Yellow, Red, and Blue is one of my favorite Portugal the Man songs, so props to Mark. Good podcast name. And I'll make sure to link that episode of his podcast in the description below. Well worth checking out. And if you love the band like I do, check out the Portugal the Man subreddit on Reddit. Why wouldn't you? What's your problem? Anyways, thanks for checking out the video. I appreciate you taking the time and watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. You know the routine. Hit the bell for notifications, and I will see you in the next video.